Kawasaki dropped their new 2026 lineup, and for once, it's not the usual, here's a new color, enjoy. Somebody finally put in work. The 2026 lineup has upgrades that riders have been asking for, and it doesn't sound like leftovers from last year. New tech, sharper performance, and bikes that don't just look different, they feel different. If you think you already know what Kawasaki is offering this year, you probably don't. Here's what's actually new in 2026 and why riders are paying attention. The biggest news is the Ninja 1100 SX. And this isn't just the headline bike because it's new. This is Kawasaki's first major sport tourer overhaul in over a decade. And it's replacing one of their best, selling all-rounders worldwide. The Ninja 1000 SX was a proven seller, so swapping it out completely means Kawasaki is making a statement. They're not abandoning the sport touring category while everyone else runs to adventure bikes. They're taking the crown. This is an all-new platform. New engine, new chassis components, updated electronics, and a complete repositioning in the lineup. Kawasaki didn't refresh the 1000 SX. They replaced it with something that defines where their entire inline-four strategy is heading for the next 5 to 8 years. The engine went from 1043cc to 1099cc with a longer stroke to prioritize mid-range torque over peak horsepower. You're getting 134 horsepower at 9,000 RPM and 83.2 foot-pounds of torque at 7,600 RPM. That torque number matters because sport touring is all about roll-on power for highway passing and loaded two-up riding, not chasing redline on a track. Kawasaki gave it ride-by-wire throttle with actual riding modes: Sport, Road, and Rain, plus 4 customizable rider modes where you can dial in traction control, power delivery, and engine braking exactly how you want it. The quick shifter handles clutchless up and down shifts, and there's electronic cruise control built in. For a sport tourer, that's the baseline tech you need, and Kawasaki finally delivered it. The suspension is fully adjustable 43mm, inverted forks up front and a horizontal backlink, rear shock with full preload, compression, and rebound adjustability. If you step up to the SE model, you get an Erlens S46 rear shock that's worth the upgrade if you're serious about loaded touring or aggressive riding. Braking is where the SE really separates itself. The base model runs dual 300mm front discs with Nissin radial mount calipers and ABS. The SE swaps in Brembo M 4.32 monoblock calipers, a Brembo master cylinder, larger discs, and steel braided lines. If you've ever ridden hard with luggage and a passenger, you know why better brakes matter. Electronics run through a Bosch 6-axis IMU, which means cornering ABS, cornering traction control, and lean angle-aware interventions across the board. The dash is a 4.3-inch full-color TFT display with Bluetooth connectivity through Kawasaki's Rideology app. You can pair your phone, get turn-by-turn navigation, check vehicle status, and log your rides. The SE adds heated grips and LED auxiliary lights, which sound minor until you're touring in cold weather or riding pre-dawn. The fuel tank holds 5 gallons, which gives you serious range for a sport tourer. Combine that with the updated fairing for better wind protection and more relaxed ergonomics compared to the old 1000 SX, and you've got a bike that can actually handle multi-day trips without destroying your back and wrists. Pricing is $13,999 for the base Ninja 1100 SX ABS. The SE model jumps to $15,799, which is an $1,800 premium for Öhlins suspension, Brembo brakes, heated grips, and better lighting. If you're planning serious touring or aggressive riding, the SE is worth it. If you're just commuting and doing weekend rides, the base model has everything you need. Kawasaki built a real sport tourer this time instead of half committing. The 1100 SX, the bike, the 1000 SX should have been from the start. But sport touring isn't the only place Kawasaki made moves. The ZX-10R and ZX-10RR finally got winglets, which is about 3 years late considering the competition's been running them since 2022. But at least Kawasaki did the homework. Outward projecting winglets and a completely rebuilt fairing increased front downforce by about 25%, while only adding 0.3% more drag. On paper, that's solid engineering. Whether it actually closes the gap to the Ducati and BMW remains to be seen until someone puts them on the same track. The fairing redesign looks aggressive with its wedge profile, higher ram air intake, and hybrid LED headlights. The whole chassis geometry and suspension settings were revised to handle the added downforce, which was necessary because bolting wings onto an old chassis doesn't work. Kawasaki claims they kept the light steering feel while improving stability and precision. The swing arm pivot got raised by 2 mm to improve rear-wheel grip on corner exit, which sounds minor but matters when you're trying to get the power down hard. Whether all this translates to lap time improvements is something track riders will figure out fast. The engine is still the 998cc inline-4, making around 200 metric horsepower. No displacement bump, no significant power increase, just refinements for emissions and throttle response. That's fine since the old motor was already strong. But don't expect any performance miracles here. Kawasaki added an extra oxygen sensor downstream and revised the catalyst to meet stricter emissions without killing throttle feel, which is harder than it sounds. Titanium valves and chromoly cams are nice touches for durability, but this is mostly the same engine with cleaner paperwork. Electronics finally caught up. The new 5-inch TFT display actually works in sunlight, which shouldn't be impressive in 2026, but here we are. 2 layouts, street mode with navigation support, and track mode with lap timer. The Radiology app integration is useful if you actually use it, though most people will set it once and forget about it. At least the shift light is customizable now, which matters if you're serious about track riding. The ZX-10RR is the homologation special with titanium rods, lighter pistons, and race suspension tuning. It's genuinely built for track use, not for people who want bragging rights. If you're not doing serious track days or club racing, the regular ZX-10R is more than enough bike. Kawasaki modernized the ZX-10R without breaking what already worked. The updates are solid but not revolutionary. It's competitive now instead of trailing behind, which is what this bike needed. Now let's talk about the bikes that actually sell in volume. The Ninja 500 through ZX-R lineup covers most of Kawasaki's sport bike sales, and honestly, 2026 is mostly fresh paint and minor updates. That's not necessarily bad if the bikes already work, but don't expect anything revolutionary here. The Ninja 500 is still the beginner option with its 451cc parallel twin. It's smooth, forgiving, and designed for people learning how motorcycles work rather than setting lap records. The SE trim adds a TFT display and smartphone connectivity, which is nice, but not essential. Pricing starts around $5,700, making it one of the cheaper ways into a new Ninja. Does exactly what it's supposed to do without trying to be more than that. The Ninja 650 runs the 649cc parallel twin that's been around forever because it works. Mid-range torque, manageable power, predictable handling. It's the bike people recommend when someone asks, what should I get after my first bike? For 2026, nothing changed mechanically. New colors, same motorcycle. Kawasaki's not fixing what isn't broken. The ZX-4R and ZX-4RR. ZX-4R are where things get interesting. 399cc inline-4 that revs past 14,000 RPM in a bike light enough to actually use all that power. This thing sounds like a mini superbike because it basically is one. The RR adds a quick shifter, better suspension adjustability. The ZX-R is the 636cc Supersport that came back in 2024 and hasn't changed much since. It's got traction control, power modes, and optional quick shifter. The 636 displacement gives it more mid-range than traditional 600s, which makes it easier to ride fast without living at redline. For 2026, expect new graphics and not much else. These bikes work because they're positioned right. Beginners get the 500 and 650. Track riders get the ZX-4R. The ZX-6R sits in the middle for people who want super sport performance without leader bike consequences. But not everyone wants to be tucked behind a fairing fighting wind blast for 6 hours. That's where the Z-Series comes in. The Z-Series covers Kawasaki's naked bike range from entry-level to supercharged. And the biggest news here is pricing. Kawasaki kept costs aggressive across the board, which matters because naked bikes compete directly on value. The Z500 starts at $5,699 for the base model and $6,399 for the SE. That's 451cc parallel twin territory aimed at new riders who want something that looks aggressive without being intimidating to actually ride. It's competent, affordable, and does exactly what it's supposed to without pretending to be more. The SE adds a TFT display and better graphics, but the base model is fine for most people. The Z650S is new to the US market for 2026, and it's basically a roomier, more comfortable version of the regular Z650. Same 649cc parallel twin engine, but with revised ergonomics that make longer rides less punishing. The regular Z650 has been around forever because it works. Strong mid-range, predictable handling, low maintenance. The S version just makes it more practical for people who actually ride instead of just commute. It's a smart addition that fills a gap Kawasaki should have addressed years ago. The Z900 is where things get interesting. 948cc inline-4 making around 110 horsepower, starting at $9,999. That's liter bike power in a lightweight chassis for less than most middleweight adventure bikes. The SE jumps to $11,999 with upgraded suspension and brakes, which is worth it if you ride aggressively, but overkill for street use. The base Z900 is one of the best performance per dollar bikes Kawasaki makes, and nothing changed for 2026 because nothing needed to change. The ZH2 is the supercharged monster running the 998cc inline-4 from the H2 platform. It makes ridiculous power, costs serious money, and exists for people who think naturally aspirated bikes are boring. The SE adds semi-active suspension that adjusts on the fly, which is genuinely useful on a bike this powerful but hard to justify at the price premium. For 2026, it's mostly color updates because the mechanical package already worked. The Z500 is for new riders who want to look cool without dying. The Z650S makes sense for commuters and intermediate riders who need something comfortable enough to actually use. The Z900 is for experienced riders who want leader bike performance without leader bike prices. The Z8H2 makes power no naturally aspirated naked bike can touch, and that matters if you care about acceleration more than anything else. Then there's the riders who think everything modern looks terrible. Kawasaki's retro lineup exists because some people genuinely prefer carburetors in chrome over ride-by-wire and carbon fiber. The Z650RS, Z900RS, and W800 cover the nostalgia market without forcing you to actually deal with 1970s reliability. The Z650RS takes the 649cc parallel twin and wraps it in classic styling with round headlight, retro tank graphics, and spoke-style cast wheels. It's lighter and more accessible than the Z900RS, making it the logical choice for people who want retro looks without leader bike weight. For 2026, it gets ebony colorway at $8,899. Same bike mechanically, new paint. The Z900RS uses the 948cc inline-4 from the Z900, but with softer power delivery and more relaxed ergonomics. It's styled after the Z1 from the 70s, which matters to exactly the people who buy this bike. The SE adds up to upgraded suspension and brakes for people who want retro looks with better performance. Most riders, the base model is plenty. The W800 is Kawasaki's air-cooled parallel twin throwback styled after the original W1 from the 60s. 773C with Babel gear-driven cam, traditional twin dials, and high-quality chrome finishes. It makes around 50 horsepower, which sounds weak until you realize that's not the point. This bike is about mechanical simplicity and classic aesthetics, not performance numbers. 2026 gets pearl crystal white at $10,699. The cruiser side is mostly Vulcans in various configurations. The Vulcan S runs the 649cc twin with ERG, OFI, T adjustability for different rider sizes. The Vulcan 900 Classic and Custom offer traditional V-twin cruiser experience with belt drive and low seat height. The Vulcan 1700 Vicario is the full bagger with integrated luggage and touring amenities. The Eliminator 450 exists as the lightweight entry cruiser where offered. For 2026, these are all carryovers with color updates. Kawasaki's not innovating in retro or cruiser segments because the people buying these bikes don't want innovation. They want what works, what looks right, and what doesn't require explaining to their insurance company. Different bikes for different priorities. Some want modern performance. Others just want something loud with two wheels. The Ninja H2 family is Kawasaki's Supercharged Flex. And for 2026, it's mostly color updates because the platform already does what it's supposed to do. 998cc inline-4 with a supercharger pushing well over 200 horsepower for the street versions and over 300 for the H2R track-only model. Those numbers vary by market and measurement standard, but the point is the same. This bike makes ridiculous power. The H2 and H2 Carbon are street legal with full electronics, steel trellis frame, single-sided swing arm, and Brembo brakes. The Carbon version adds carbon fiber bodywork and some weight savings, but it's mostly a visual upgrade for people who want exclusivity. Both bikes run the same motor, same chassis, same performance. You're paying extra for the materials and the badge. The H2R is the closed-course only version with no headlights, no mirrors, and tuning that prioritizes peak power over street usability. It's built for people doing standing mile events or track days where naturally aspirated bikes feel slow. If you're not using it for that specific purpose, the Street H2 is the better buy. For 2026, Kawasaki didn't touch the mechanical package. New graphics, maybe some trim changes, but the core bike stays the same. That makes sense because the H2 already sits in its own category. No other manufacturer is building street-legal supercharged sport bikes at this level, so Kawasaki has no real competition to respond to. Forced induction is handled. Adventure bikes are next. The dual sport side got actual updates this year with the KLX 230 Sherpa S and KLX 230 DF, replacing the old KLX 230 models. Both run the same 233C air-cooled single, making around 17 horsepower at 8,000 RPM and 13.3 foot-pounds at 6,400 RPM. Those numbers sound weak until you realize that's not what these bikes are for. They're built for people who want something light, simple, and capable of handling fire roads without requiring a mechanic's degree to maintain. Air-cooled, fuel-injected, 6-speed gearbox. No electronic rider aids, no TFT display, just a motorcycle that starts and runs. The Sherpa S has a lower seat height at about 32.5 inches and shorter suspension travel, making it easier for shorter riders or people who prioritize street use over serious off-road work. It gets luggage mounting points, handguards, skid plate, and a tubeless rear tire for easier roadside repairs. The idea is you can commute on pavement during the week and hit Forest Service roads on weekends without needing two different bikes. Pricing sits around $5,699, which undercuts most of the competition. The DF version runs taller suspension with about 9.5 inches of ground clearance and a 33-inch seat height. It's aimed at riders who actually plan to hit trails instead of just commuting on dirt roads. Standard luggage rack and engine guards come included, and the longer suspension travel handles rough terrain better without bottoming out. You're paying $5,799, so an extra $100 gets you better off-road capability and slightly more aggressive positioning. The KLR 650 family and Versys models are still around for 2026, but Kawasaki hasn't issued detailed press releases on them yet. They're showing up in dealer inventories with color updates, so expect carryover bikes with fresh graphics. The KLR runs the 652cc liquid-cooled single with long travel suspension, 21 17-inch wheels, and a reputation for being nearly indestructible. It's the bike people buy when they want something that works everywhere without being great at anything specific. The Versys 650 uses the parallel twin from the Ninja 650 with 17-inch wheels and street-biased ergonomics. The Versys 1000 SELT Plus runs the inline-4 from the old Ninja 1000 with electronic suspension and a full touring package. Both are competent, but not exciting, which is exactly what that segment demands. The off-road competition range includes the KX motocross bikes from 65cc to 450 and the KLX trail bikes like the 140R, 230R, and 300R. These are mostly annual updates with graphics changes and minor tuning adjustments. The KX 450 and KX 250 run aluminum frames and are legitimate race-ready bikes. The smaller KX models are for kids and beginners working their way up. Nothing revolutionary here, just Kawasaki keeping the lineup current for people who actually race or ride off-road seriously. That covers everything Kawasaki's selling for 2026. Time to figure out what it all means. For riders, this means if you want sport performance or naked bike value, Kawasaki's lineup is strong. If you want adventure touring or serious cruising, look elsewhere. The 2026 updates aren't revolutionary, but they don't need to be. Kawasaki made smart investments in the 1100 ZX-10R while keeping proven sellers where they work. That's the full Kawasaki 2026 lineup. Some real updates, some fresh paint, and a clear strategy behind it all. Kawasaki did their part this year. Whether you're into sport tourers, super sports, or naked bikes, they actually gave riders something worth talking about. But if you really want a curveball, go check out the Harley 2026 lineup we just covered. Different approach, different crowd, and honestly, some of those changes are way more controversial. If you want to see how another brand handled their big update year, hit that Harley video next. You'll have opinions. It's intriguing.